I've seen this meme recently that says something along the lines of, people only like you because you are nice and do nice things and are a joy to be around. The message seems to be to elicit comfort and to be affirming. You are loved because of what you give. In my view, I found the message personally to be horrifying, and I don't know if anyone else took it the way I did, but seems to be one of the least hopeful things I've ever heard. If I am loved for my actions, then people love my actions, not me. Sure, maybe in some sense we are our actions, but what if our actions and our motivations do not line up? Essentially, good actions with an ulterior purpose. People love me now because things are normal now. It doesn't take much effort on their end to love. But how much would it take to have them turn against me? I hate to imagine that love is superficial. If they could hear 10 of my thoughts a day randomly selected, would they leave as soon as they possibly could? Haibane Renmei sees a world where Haibane, angelic-looking people, emerge from cocoons and live inside a walled city, not knowing how they got there and not knowing what lies beyond the limits of the city. All they have is a dream they experienced while in the cocoon. All this is set in a beautiful landscape of muted oranges and greens and a celestial soundtrack to accompany it. The show never actually explains why any of this happens. My first thought was that the Haibane were people that had committed suicide. My thoughts wavered on this as I watched the show, but the final episode seemed to confirm it to me, at least partially. All of their dreams are very suspicious. Falling into a river, falling asleep, falling from the sky, and being run over by a train. However, the Haibane are not only young adults and teenagers, but include small children as well. The children don't seem to show the same deep sadness I feel in the older characters, leading me to wonder if the children had died from one thing or another before arriving in this world, while the older Haibane's deaths were self-inflicted. I am aware of a piece of Japanese folklore that describes an afterlife where children who have passed on share the space with people who have died that had not married. I don't know if the notion relates to this story at all, not to mention that this story seems to draw heavily from Christianity. The walled city on the surface seems to be a purgatory. Then perhaps maybe only the corrupted Haibane are the ones that killed themselves. As in Christianity, suicide is considered a sin, and the other Haibane died in other fashions. Though I have never been comfortable with this idea, as the thought of someone who has been neglected and pushed to the brink being punished for their actions seems ludicrous. The fault cannot lie on them, but we will return to this line of thought later. Further, the show doesn't actually explain any of this. Maybe the characters aren't necessarily dead. All we know is that they did come from somewhere else, that they feel this strongly. But what about the rest of the town? Initially, I thought that the town was an oppressive force because why do they make the Haibane work? Then on top of that, the Haibane cannot carry money and they can only use second-hand items. But then the town becomes questionable, as in the people can have children and grow old and are humans. If this is an afterlife, why are there living people there? Not to mention that these people are just as trapped as the Haibane are. They cannot leave the town either. Yet there is a very strong sense of camaraderie and love. They seem to feel that they are in this together, even if some of the townspeople can be kind of tone deaf. Now think about our own lives. We can trace where we came from further back than the Haibane can, but eventually we hit a wall, realizing that we don't actually know where we came from. And then there's the issue of where we are going. Well, obviously death, but we think there has to be something more to it than just that, just like how the Haibane feel there's more to their time in town than waiting for their day of flight. Even further, we don't know what happens, if anything, after those two events. Though the day of flight, at least on the surface, seems more promising to me. The Haibane don't remember anything of their past lives, but like many victims of memory loss, they retain the ability to speak and can remember how to perform a multitude of tasks. Now, let's run a thought experiment. If a person forgets everything, they will remember the name Maria. They will know that that word signifies a name. Yet, even if they knew a Maria for 50 years, they wouldn't be able to connect that name to them. Maria is therefore a name, not a being. Now, what about God? There's a conversation in the show concerning God that made me wonder. Raka knows what God is, so we perceive God as a being. If a person can remember God and attach that moniker to a being, what does that say? Is it because God does not reflect any known being while Maria does? Or is it as simple as remembering the definition for a word? Say, if one met God and suffered a head injury, they would still remember what God means, but they wouldn't remember meeting God? I guess that is the problem. Trying to figure this out is like chasing a rainbow. Okay, what was that conversation about God that started all of this? Well, Nemu and Raka know a librarian in town who will be going on maternity leave soon, and as a gift, Nemu wants to finish an incomplete story that the two had found long ago. As a side note, the librarian character interests me, as they remark on how they used to want to know what lay beyond the walls, but now with added responsibilities in life it no longer bothers them that often. It's interesting how quickly we can forget what we used to be due to the world around us. Isn't that purposeful? Anyway, Nemu and Raka write out the full story, and it was so beautiful that I was brought to tears. Their story focuses around God's creation of the world, splitting the darkness and bringing the light. However, the story adds something to God that we do not typically think of. God is not a perfect being. Instead, they make mistakes. When he tears the seams of nothingness, it isn't a clean split, and mountains and valleys are formed because of that. But this does not bother them. Instead, it is welcomed and accepted. God then creates the Haibane, who are imperfect. So, they store them in their head before creating the humans. God then falls asleep, and the Haibane escape his head and dance in the sky. God, loving of their creations, does not interfere. The story reflects a deep suffering in the world, yet at the same time an indescribable joy, that the imperfections, the mistakes in the act of doing, are actually places where something amazing that was never intended for can happen. If everything happened as planned, what would we have? Their creation story is only a fiction they wrote, and perhaps our creation stories are influenced by the times they are made in, hence making them reflective of our current lives and not the actual reality at creation. What is to be made of this? In the show's case, this is a story that is both comforting and shows acceptance. They see how they are different and how they are treated, but they still take joy in who they are, and even if their origins are shaky and even terrifying, they still get to be here. A part of this show that is agonizing to me is Raka's relation with her wings. During her first night, her wings sprout from her back, breaking through the skin covered in blood. It is true body horror. Her wings are some mysterious foreign piece growing on her own body that she has a difficult time adjusting to. Further, when her wings become corrupted, it terrorizes her to no end, especially in how she thinks other people will view her, so she uses scissors to cut off the corrupted parts of her wings. But no matter how far she goes, the corruption keeps spreading. She is pained by the body she has to be in. It's no secret that this show questions the concept of gender. Ku is often called a boy by one of the restaurant owners, and Ku neither corrects them on this nor seems put off by it. Then there is Kana, who in the traditional sense acts a lot like how we'd expect a boy to act, in the sense of their rowdiness and in the way that they dress. It leads us to deconstruct how we perceive gender and how we present ourselves to the world. Gender clearly becomes an act, something to be put on. In itself, that doesn't have to be a bad thing, like having a mustache and no beard. That is an act one has to maintain, but if they like the look, it is of no concern. Yet gender exists in an area that is heavily controlled. It is pushed upon people, and if it doesn't match one's identity, it can become agonizing and an entrapment. I believe these feelings are portrayed in how Raka deals with her wings. I especially felt it when she was telling Reki how she could no longer feel her body. To me, it seemed to be an extreme form of disassociation. I'm referring to the scene after she touches the wall. Overwhelmed by it all, she no longer sees herself as present, no longer accepts herself in her body. She does not understand why she was taken to this world, and has to experience these things. She begs for answers, she begs for an escape, but is given nothing to work with. Then why is it surprising she takes matters into her own hands? The western forest is dangerous, but she goes to it anyway, following the crows. It is a feeling of isolation that feels incompatible. How can Raka, surrounded by some of the most kind and caring people out there, still feel so isolated? because she is one, with her own mind, with a divide between who she is and what she does. It comes through as an immense guilt for how she perceives herself in the world, her guilt stemming from something in her past life that she will never be able to know of, making it difficult to reconcile. That is, until she journeys to the bottom of the well and finds a dead crow. The crow is someone from her past life, and just like a guilt she can't remember, there is a love she can't remember too. It's weighed heavily on me for a while now, the things I can't remember. Is there a part of my behavior, things I do that occur because of an event from my past, and without knowing what that event was, am I stuck? Can I course correct? This is why this scene really spoke to me. Raka not only reconciles her guilt, she gets to have something in the form of that crow. That's someone who was there for her, who has always been trying to save her. Who it is remains unknown, but the name doesn't matter. Just as an unknown guilt from the past can affect us, so does an unknown love. She travels to her darkest place to find hope. Then there is Reki. I think she epitomizes what I spoke of at the beginning of this video. Is love an act, or is it deeper than anything else in the universe? The final episode was uncomfortable for me to watch, but thinking back on it, it has only gotten worse for me. Hearing Reki, who has taken care of Raka for the whole season, reveal her jealousy and her disdain for her, pushing her away, is just excruciating. Yet we are not meant to dislike Reki here. Instead, we come to understand her far better than we would have otherwise. Reki desperately seeks salvation, and how can one fault her for that? What she does is she promises to Raka before she was born that no matter who she was, she would take care of her and be nicer than she had ever been before. The only complication is the selfishness factor. We want people to be nice, and we want to be treated nicely. We want to treat others with kindness. Why? Usually it feels good to do so. There's the issue. Kindness then becomes selfish. In Reki's case, even more so. Her kindness is to give herself salvation. Raka, after being pushed away, initially falls into tears. Her fragile world has been shattered again. But then, her love for Reki outweighs Reki's actions. Raka goes back for her. Meanwhile, Reki must contend with herself. She had been so focused on lifting others up that she feared to ever communicate any of her sadness to them. For that wouldn't be a nice thing to do, wouldn't it? She even tells herself she would never cry for help, because what if no one answers? It turns out when she does, Raka answers. This is when the show came together for me. It's about the need to reach out to others and the need to be receptive to others, that it is okay to ask for help. What this show does so well is to take the feelings around this as serious. The jealousy, the anger, the feeling of betrayal. You can't get through this life without coming up to these things, especially in the process of asking for help. That the process of getting through this is tough. It requires more than one person, even if we are all stuck in our own minds. What I love about this is that Reki, even if she had selfish intentions, did come to love Raka. Reki's care for her was earnest and in the end did not mean nothing, and it inspired Raka to take on that caring ways of Reki so she could be there for the next Haibane that appears. What's really sad is that Raka's help allows Reki to take her day of flight, leaving forever. Despite them deepening their connection, it was to lead to their separation. The one hope that lingers on in the show is the idea that they will see each other again, that when they leave, they will see Ku and Reki and be united once more. This remains the hardest aspect to grasp. There is no certainty in this belief. It is only faith that there will be something in the future. If that keeps them going, then it is good. If their mistakes bring them closer, then it is good. If they change, it is good. If they believe, that is good. I'll even add that I think Reki's love for Raka was genuine from the start, even if she initially thought otherwise. It's very hard not to care for someone.